Hi, everybody. This is your old pal, Uncle Hondo, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on Sports Illustrated and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. It's Saturday, and you know what that means. When it's Saturday, it's time for our guy, Johnny Guitars, my longtime buddy, highly successful journalist, an extremely successful attorney in the Atlanta Buckhead area, who joins us each and every week as he has for many, many years, and to go around the world of football. John, you've known me a long time. I am very frustrated about something. And there's times I get irritated, but I'm not really a frustrated kind of guy. I don't live there. I don't let myself live there. And these next 2 days, I'm going to hammer this point on the podcast. The Raiders, nobody thought Ben Johnson was coming to the Raiders, including me and including Ben Johnson. But Mark Davis secures Tom Brady to be part of the process. A brilliant move. And then Brady and Johnson begin to build a relationship, and Brady is impressed with him. He's impressed with Brady. And now the Raiders sit here, and Ben Johnson is clearly the front runner. Clearly. Of course, no coaches can be hired till their season's over. So let's just say clearly the front runner. Okay. Here's my concern, John. Now all of a sudden the narrative is Ben Johnson may go to the Raiders, but that's because he didn't want to coach against Dan Campbell. 4 weeks ago, I know he didn't care about coaching against Dan Campbell. He was going to Chicago. Why does it seem the narrative with the Raiders, nobody can ever give them credit for anything? It's beginning now, and I'm not a fan, but it's beginning to irritate me because it's just blatant disrespect.
I think it goes back many, many, many decades. I'm sure a lot of the folks out there watching and listening know it's always kind of been easy to take a slight at the Raiders. I imagine some of it began to build up through the NFL films that we all know, with the great scenes, the great sounds, the perception of the Raider. What is a Raider? And that has grown a lot of fans, but it also polarized some other folks. I think that kind of stuff has stuck over time, especially with an older audience. For the newer audience, for newer fans, I think that they've seen the Raiders stumble a bit. It is amazing because from an outside perspective, they've never gotten the credit they deserve for the building that they did during the Gruden era, and when everybody knows what happened in New England. That was a really, really good team that was set up for who knows how many wins if they had gotten over a hump. I do think that the Raiders are an easy franchise to pick on. It's a big, giant target. That's part of what comes with having a big target. You're not going to see people pick on or criticize as much when the Cardinals are hiring somebody, or the Dolphins, or the Falcons, or the Seahawks. Not even some of the classic franchises, the ones that are on the top shelf. Some of them they get special treatment from media and fans. They're revered. The Giants, the Steelers, the Cowboys. The Raiders are the only one on that top shelf that gets picked on a lot and probably gets slighted. And the best way to resolve that, of course, is to just win, baby. We are going to be around long enough, I hope, to see them turn it around and begin to compete into this later stage of the playoffs, which really, obviously, we're getting ready to kick off this, later today. But I do think there's always been a little bit of a slight that's taken, and I think it goes all the way back. I think it's kind of baked in the cake. And until they win in a dominant fashion, I think that's probably going to be there. I just give one example of how perceptions can change so much. Nobody ever had the Chiefs as a super giant class, top shelf organization until they went on the amazing run they had with Andy Reid and all the other pieces that we know. So perception can change. It can change over a decade. Hopefully, now that they're kind of starting clean, starting fresh, that's where this is going to go. They got all the tools. They got the setup. They got the facilities like you talked about. There's a lot of advantages. I know that people don't want to be any more patient, but there's no shortcut to it. You're going to have to be a little bit more patient, but hope and expect that some seeds were planted this year in some of the talent acquired in the draft. And next year's going to be an improvement. And the question is, how big of a jump?
Yeah, totally agree with you. John, let's get talking about it. I was not a fan of the NFL going to some streaming services. But John, it's working. And I'm going to tell you something. I now can watch stuff on my phone. And I can't when it's CBS. I mean, I'm sure there's some way, but I don't know how. My point is, I think this streaming service stuff is working. Will you talk about that?
It is. I'm kind of with you. You know, forever, all the NFL was on free TV, and it's moved away from that. And now, are we going to be stuck with some streaming? Yes. Yes. The bottom line is the audience is there. The Ravens Steelers game, 22 million for Prime Video. That's too many to walk away from, folks. That's just too many. So we've seen the Netflix Christmas Day matchup. We've seen some hit and miss Prime Thursday night games, although they were certainly better this year overall. And some of us still think they need to move to Friday without any question in the world. But the point is, wow, you're going to put a playoff game on streaming wildcard weekend. Is anyone going to watch it? Yes. The bottom line is there's enough people that have Amazon Prime Video, 22 million. That is such an astonishingly large number. It would be a great number if it was on regular TV. It'd be a great number if it was on any of the networks. So this is something that's here to stay. I'm not sure everybody likes it. I'm not sure everybody's okay with it. There are, I don't know, hundreds of million people that have a Prime subscription. And one way you can look at it, hey, this is a great benefit. The other way, like, why would the NFL do this? I got to just think that the revenue grab is enormous. And Amazon is a huge, wide platform. Streaming is not going anywhere, folks. I don't know if it's going to encroach anymore. I don't know if we're going to see a Sunday game going on streaming each week. That would be another thing that would probably make some people step back. But the streaming thing, massive hit. It's going to be back next year in the playoffs, I'm sure.
So, a couple of things. Jeff Bezos wants an NFL team, so he's willing to pay whatever because he prints money. And I'm not spiting him for that. I'm respecting him for it. But I want to see where I can just stream whatever I want. I mean, I've got YouTube TV right now, and I probably only use 6 channels. I want it to come where I can just purchase the channels I want. Now, if others want to give them to me for free, I'll take them because that's how I would maybe discover them, and that's how a new channel could build an audience. But I now, and I know I'm 53 and I'm an old man, get off my lawn. I'm starting to buy into this now. And I'm starting now to be like, man, I want to be able to purchase X, Y, Z, P, D, and Q. And I like the idea of streaming. I think it's headed in that direction that pretty soon it's going to be a la carte. You just pick what you want. What do you think?
We've been in that business, around that industry for a long, long time, and hoping that that's the way it would go. There's a lot of red tape and a lot of things to stumble over, but that appears to be where it's heading. From the consumer perspective, they're now looking at, if you're going to bundle all these things together, that's pretty much what cable already is. So are we going to go in a circle a bit? It looks like it. But the idea of being able to just buy a la carte is one that people want. There's no question there's demand for it. We may see some interesting innovation in Major League Baseball because of their regional sports television collapse to where that can be done. But yeah, I'm right there with you. It especially makes sense for sports. I want to subscribe to all of the Seattle Supersonics games when they give that NBA team back up there in Seattle one day. So I can just watch them from anywhere, no problem, on my TV, my tablet, my screen. I don't have to have a whole bunch of channels, often into the hundreds, that we don't watch. And it's weird because if you look at the breakdown, you do actually pay for them, although some of them are very small. Of course, they're offset by ESPN, TNT, TBS, some of the most expensive ones you pay for on cable. But a lot of people are just like, hey, I don't want that. If I can just get a subscription to watch the Athletics or just to watch the Raiders with no blackouts, no anything, maybe that's the way I want to go. Hopefully that is the future. There is a lot of give and take, as we know. If you watch any of the media coverage, the sports business media, or just the media coverage with Paramount, Hulu, etc., Disney. There's a whole lot of change coming. Maybe it ends up in an a la carte fashion, which is something there is plenty of demand for. I know people out there right now are like, yep, that's me. Absolute incredible demand to be able to do that.
All right, you and I were way ahead of the curve on something that happened this week. The Cowboys move on from Mike McCarthy. And we had discussed, I told you at the owners' meeting, I heard several owners say if Mike McCarthy comes available, he's not going to have any problem getting a job. He did 3 12-win seasons with the Cowboys. Yes, they have tapered off at the end, but he has no say over personnel. Jerry Jones is in charge of everything. There's a lot of people wondering are the Cowboys going forward or tapering off? And here's my thing. I don't unless they get Belichick, which I know their interest is there, and I know that his $10 million buyout is not that big of a deal. But I don't think Dion is a step forward at all. And I like him. That's not a slam on him. I just don't think he's a Mike McCarthy quality. And the other thing is Jerry is still going to be there. I think the Steelers are, the Cowboys are going backwards, not forwards. Mike McCarthy has got a bunch of interviews already lined up. He's going to be coaching somewhere next year. Your thoughts on the Cowboys?
My thoughts on the Cowboys are that they maybe had a little window and it closed. It looks like it closed. You can track back to the offseason and the stumbles that Jerry Jones has to take responsibility for relative to getting the contracts done. And that kind of set them up for a bad situation. And then this mess that they've had here at the end with McCarthy. We did talk about this weeks ago. I think the right thing for Mike McCarthy to do is to move on. He's got a number of years left to be a really great coach. I'm sure he knows as far as energy, desire, all that kind of stuff. Why do it there? Jacksonville would be a great place, obviously, with the quarterback there. New Orleans is right down the road. Chicago's in the old neighborhood. He could also take a year off. I think this is great for Mike McCarthy. If I'm Mike McCarthy, I'm thinking I've got a relatively, no, let's just put the years that I've got left to coach, there's less of those ahead of me than there are behind me. No reason to waste another one in Dallas, regardless of how great he loves the players and maybe loves that city. He's got to go. Now, the Cowboys look like they are set to slide backward here. Dion has not coached a game in the NFL. It's just not clear how that would work. It could work really well. It could not work really well. It'll get a lot of clicks, sell a lot of papers, get a lot of eyeballs, but I don't know if that's really what the Cowboys actually need. Belichick seems to be what they probably could not justify, but if you replace McCarthy with Belichick, you're at least perception-wise staying even, if not moving up a step. It's going to look a little messy. Belichick doesn't care about mess. Look what happened with him there in the Jets. We actually talked a little bit. As soon as Belichick revealed what the buyout was before July 1st, I remember we had a chat and said, hey, look at this. This, I'm sure, is going to come up. And sure enough, it should. That's not the Cowboys' problem. The Cowboys' problem is they got to stop what looks like a little bit of a bleeding situation right now, where they are closing their own window. If they come up with some first-time coach or some really significant step back from Mike McCarthy, it's going to make it more difficult for them to compete. The balance of power in the NFC East has clearly changed. The Eagles are way, way up. The Commanders are on the way up and have passed by the Cowboys and the Giants. Cowboys have some problems coming in these middle and late 20s. They better pull a rabbit out of a hat. I'm not sure Belichick is that rabbit, but he might be the best one. And as you know, they are behind in who they can interview because there are teams that are still in the playoffs and people that they're going to want to talk to that are practically guaranteed to advance. So there's going to be somebody that they want to talk to who's not going to lose this weekend that they're going to have to wait on. Not good. Cowboys, free fall. They're not free falling yet, but they're getting close to a free fall.
Tuesday night, Shannon and I were driving, and I was talking to an NFL executive on the phone, and he said something to me that just hit me up. This is a man who has amazing respect for Al Davis for good reason. But he said to Shannon and I, you're seeing with Jerry Jones what we saw with Al Davis at the end. nobody's strong enough to save him from himself. Isn't that powerful? I never would have put that two and two together, but that was super powerful.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that with college coaches at times. We've seen it. Um, we've probably seen it with other owners, but maybe in other sports. But maybe those teams weren't that good. It wasn't like they were legitimately competing for a championship and then slid down. They were already kind of down and kept sliding. It is a concern. Look, and I understand. I do give Jerry Jones some credit for saying, "I bought the team. This is my dream job. I'm going to do it. I'm the guy. The buck stops here." I give him credit for that. And when he does that, you're open to credit and criticism. So you hit on this draft pick, you missed on this one. They got a lot of work to do. It would probably help if he would realize I can turn some of this over. The guy that I would like to talk to about this, and the guy that anyone who would be interested in the Cowboy job, such as a Bill Belichick, might want to talk to, is Bill Parcells. I wonder how much insight that would never be aired or shared publicly Parcells could give somebody in dealing with Jones in that organization. I hope there's a window. I'm not a Cowboy fan. It's not like I want them to succeed. It's a lot of fun when they don't. Let's be honest. Everybody knows that. Who's not a fan? But I wonder if there is a position, if there is a way to position that head coach, if there is a name, if there's a resume big enough that would give Jones just a step back a little bit. Maybe it's Bill Belichick. Again, Carolina, they got into this. They knew what they were getting into. I don't think there's going to be many hard feelings if that's the way it goes. We're not looking at anything imminent. There's no clear sign that Bill Belichick is going to go there. And I assume if he does, it will be with practically no buildup. It would just be he's gone because there's no benefit or positive in Bill Belichick's going to talk to the Cowboys. Bill Belichick talks to the Cowboys. A second interview. None of that, especially after what happened to him last year down the street here in Atlanta. Cowboys in trouble. They got to watch out for a massive step back. They are on the clock.
So our Pittsburgh Steelers beat writer on Sports Illustrated is Noah Strackbine, who's a really good friend of mine. And he had a quote yesterday from or I guess it was a couple days ago, but from an NFL executive on Mike Tomlin. And basically it was he gets teams that aren't playoff teams to the playoffs. So they're always picking in the 20s, which isn't his fault. The ownership doesn't like to trade up, doesn't like to spend a bundle of money, and the guy just wins. Now, 8 years in a row, lost in the first round, but he's getting non-playoff teams to the playoffs. And he had a line that basically said, if Mike Tomlin became available, I don't remember now if it was 23 or 25 NFL teams would be at his door the next day with homemade cookies and bourbon. I thought that was just a great line. And Tomlin comes out and says, hey, save your time. I'm not going anywhere. I just want your thoughts on the Tomlin situation.
He has overachieved because when you look at these rosters, they're overachieved. They don't have a quarterback. They don't have one. They don't have one. They haven't had one for a little while here. They Correct. Don't have first round picks all over their lines like you talked about because of where they're picking. So I believe that they have actually overachieved to make the playoffs as many times as they have without really any question. They seem to do it a little bit with smoke and mirrors. It's not a super deep roster. This is nowhere near the Eagles roster, for example. Nowhere near. And Tomlin, to his credit, he doesn't make a whole lot of it. But yeah, I love the idea that he said, hey, save your time. I love the idea that he said, I don't make excuses for failure. I own it, but I also feel like I'm capable. And so as long as I'm afforded an opportunity to do that, I will continue. But I certainly understand their frustrations, meaning the fans. And probably more importantly than that, I share it because that's how I'm wired. This is a guy that is driven to win, that is driven to take what he has in the team and put it in the best position it can to succeed. I think he did that again this year. I don't think Najee Harris has been some kind of a letdown. I think there's not a ton enough around him to elevate him, for example. Some of these guys that they've had successful at the wideout position, they weren't really pumped up and expected to be big stars when they got into the NFL, for example. He somehow gets a playoff situation out of an underdeveloped Justin Fields, meaning I don't think that Fields has had enough time playing to develop himself and his skills as much as he could, which I don't know that that's even going to happen because you better come into the NFL pretty much ready to go now. And then he's got discarded Russell Wilson, a lot of check downs, a lot of unbelievably gorgeous and really catchable bombs, and somehow gets in here. They got a lot of work to do in Pittsburgh. It might be interesting to see what, I don't think that he feels like he's being constricted by the ownership. If he was at this point in his professional career, Mike Tomlin would probably find a way out. He'd say, you know what? I'm out of here. So they're not really constricting him, but he also is not a guy that's going to come out and complain. He doesn't complain through back channels. He doesn't raise his hand and say, hey, look at me. Hey, give me credit for doing all this. And by and large, I think that's why he is absolutely adored by the bulk of the Steeler fan base, which, like the Raiders, is a national fan base. It's as big as it gets. They were America's team for a good chunk of his early years in Pittsburgh. Just call it what it was. Very interesting to always watch them. They got a lot of needs. They've got a lot of things that they need to upgrade. Will they have the resources to do it? How do they spend the money? There is a lot of interest in watching the Steelers this year because they are in that AFC North. You know who's right down the street. You know who is, I don't know if the Bengals are a couple of players away, but they've got their hands full just to compete in their own division.
I think the Bengals are a new owner away or an owner retiring and his daughter taking over. John, let's turn now to Sean McVay. I think he is the NFL Coach of the Year. Listen, I certainly think Sean Payton deserves to be in that conversation with what he did with Bo Nix, but rewards go to winners. McVay won. I'd like your thoughts on Sean McVay.
It's really a fascinating thing. Maybe he got close to burned out. Maybe he had some things that bothered him. He looked at going another direction. It seems like he went into the Rams and said, look, if I'm going to keep doing this, I need this and this to be set up. We got to have it this way, or I need to go somewhere else or take a retirement. They said, okay. So he's running the show with no question, no doubt. You guys all remember how hard they were coming last year in the playoffs. They really came close. They really came close to making another Super Bowl run. This year, a lot of injuries early. They somehow find a way to keep it together and somehow emerge almost a little quietly in the most competitive division in the NFL. Now we get to the end of the season. And Sean McVay says, listen, everybody's going to rest pretty much. Not really worried about the last game of the year. We're worried about the playoffs. They count the most. So he's taken a small roll of the dice. And wow, did it work. Did you see how fresh the Rams looked, how crisp they looked, how well they blocked, how well they tackled, how well they managed their assignments? You didn't see people making massive mistakes. And they hammered the Vikings. They absolutely tore them up. And they have everybody's attention now like, hello, I think this may be a very serious trend setter. Very serious trend setter. Resting so many guys in the final week of the year works so well. Now, let's see how it works for the Chiefs. They even resting a longer time than the Rams. If this works pretty well too, this is going to become the trend that we're going to see next year. Somebody's going into the final week of the year. They could play for seeding, but they don't have a chance to get the bye. Who really cares relative to that wild card game, relative to setting ourselves up for a run multiple weeks in a row? I think this is a big trend that Sean McVay is going to to set, and I think we're going to see it followed next year, which leads me to another thought that I'm sure is not original, but with the schedule the size that it is right now, there's not really space for it, is there? And that would be a bye week for all between the end of the regular season and the start of the playoffs. That's something to keep in mind. Some kind of semi-bye or bye week. Might that do more for the NFL in keeping players actually playing in the final week of the season? Because this is the trend I'm going to keep an eye on. We're going to credit Sean McVay for it because of how well they did. boy, did they do really well against the Vikings. And they are, again, relatively rested. We just look at it. You could see it. Everybody could see it. The Vikings were spent. They had just battled the Lions the week before in a game of high importance that they had to show up for. They couldn't rest anybody. And man, did they pay the price. And wow, did the Rams look sharp, look fresh, look crisp. Sean McVay is really, really, really in tune with what's going on with his team.
Before we do our fearsome foursome picks, I want to talk about the Vikings real quick. To me, Sam Darnold cost himself about $100 million, which I'm fine with. JJ McCarthy's going nowhere. They shouldn't. He is the future. I wouldn't trade him no matter what. I would have traded Darnold before him. But McConnell is a guy that's got 1 year left on his deal. To me, this is a no-brainer for the Vikings. And you move it forward with McCarthy, you re-sign McConnell. This is not brain surgery here. What are your thoughts on the Vikings real quick?
My thoughts are they should sign the coach. They should Cousins franchise Darnold, and they don't need to worry about McCarthy. We've talked about this in the past. We're going to talk about it again. The value of the rookie pay scale relative to quarterbacks, you don't have to worry about it. JJ McCarthy will take care of himself. He will either play his way into being clearly the starter and hopefully really successful in Minnesota, or not able to be a starting quarterback at the NFL level. They don't have to worry about that. They got to sign the coach. Clearly, he knows what he's doing. Multiple quarterbacks, multiple success. I think they should franchise Darnold just like the Washington franchise did with Kirk Cousins. You remember they did that to him twice. There's no downside I can see in doing that. They don't overthink a no-brainer here. If somebody wants to sign Darnold to a big fat stack, that's fine. Off he goes. They need to find another. But if you're the Vikings, go ahead and franchise him. Don't wreck the car. You got some progress. You got some momentum. Really successful year. Of course, Darnold's limited. Everybody's limited. Belichick told you right on the game. He saw it right away. He said, they can't block anybody, especially up the middle. This is not going well for Minnesota. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. So I think franchise him, sign the coach. The rest will play itself out over the next couple of years.
John, let's get to the fearsome foursome. By the way, where are we at?
For the playoff week 1, I was able to clip you with one big win. Of course, that Charger game, a lot of people drank that Charger Kool-Aid, and they got a little shock system going. Of course, we've got 4 without any question. And to be honest with you, and I've said this for years, and Hondo knows, this to me is the best football weekend in the sport all
Not
year.
Close.
Not even close. You take all the excitement advantage that college football, traditional college football had. You take all the athletic advantage that the NFL had. You get to combine them. This is my favorite weekend. It has been forever. This divisional round, these 4 games, I think they are the best and the most fun in the sport. We're going to celebrate our great sport. Texans at Chiefs with the caption, the layoff Chiefs.
I feel like a schmo this week because I'm taking all 4 home teams. I can see a scenario where the Texans win this, and I would love it because I don't think the Chiefs are winning the Super Bowl. So I'd love it. I love the Texans. I love D'Amico. I love CJ Stroud. I love the city. I just think the Chiefs at home in that atmosphere, it's a learning process. I mean, I had a front row seat watching the Bulls become the Bulls and having to knock off the bad boy Pistons. Tom Izzo, the Hall of Fame coach at Michigan State, has said to me on numerous occasions, the hardest part of his job is that everyone looks at Michigan State went to a Final Four, but the next year you bring in a bunch of new players and they have to win as well. Learning to win at this level is new. That is the only reason I'm giving the Chiefs the nod here, but I'm going with the Chiefs, hoping for the Texans, but a win by the Texans would not shock me.
Yeah, I think the Texans are a couple players away, a few too many injuries away, and I'm going to give all the yield to Andy Reid. The Chiefs saw what the Rams did. They don't need to talk about it. They all saw it. Fresh, sharp. Here come the Chiefs. The Chiefs are going to take it, I think, as well. The Commanders at Lions could be a phenomenal, entertaining game later on today. Could be. This one seems like a big blue wave. Any shot for the Commanders, who've already massively overachieved this year?
Certainly a shot. And I don't even think they're as far along as the Texans. And the Lions have paid some prices. They've had to learn how to win at home, at Ford Field. I've been there many times. Used to be a season ticket holder there. I'm not a fan, but I'm going with the home team here. A win, I don't think would shock me. Certainly, a win, the Texans win wouldn't shock me or surprise me. If you played that game 10 times, I think the Chiefs win 6. You play this game 10 times, I think the Lions win 7. So a win would not shock me, but certainly surprise me. I'm going with the Lions.
Roster is really, really deep for the Lions. We know there's like 25 guys on their injury list. That makes this game closer. If it comes down to a kicking situation, look out below with the Commanders kicker getting a little nervy. I think that justice is served here. The Lions are the better team right now, the better organization, and just a tremendous season for the Commanders, a preview of hopefully things to come. I like the Lions as well. Now, on Sunday, we do have it's not a great advantage, but Sean McVay has a coaching advantage, period, pretty much over just about anybody. So how does that factor in a roster situation where the Eagles have the better roster without much of any question? There's a little bit of a concern anytime things are going too well for a lot of Philadelphia franchises. A lot of fans are excited, but they're also very concerned about something going wrong, about somebody choking, about something falling through. I wonder if we might see that a little bit on Sunday because Eagle fans also saw how good the Rams looked. Long trip east, Rams at Eagles.
This is the opposite to me. Every factor I have has this at 5-5. And I rate on 10 factors. I have an 11th that Don Shula taught me, which was something emotional. So last week I picked the Rams to win because of all the fires. But even Shula said you can't sustain emotion in the NFL. And so it's good for one game, but it's not necessarily something that sustains. So the only reason I'm going with the Eagles is because the game is at home for them. If this was at SoFi, I would be going with the Rams. Either team winning this game does not surprise me. I want the Rams to win. I do want the Rams to win. I'm not an Eagle fan I don't know that I would say I'm a hater, but I'm certainly not an Eagle fan. But I am a Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford type guy. I like where that's at. But again, this is 50-50 to me. I'm only going with the Eagles because it's the home team, and a win by either team would not surprise me.
The home field advantages should be real, especially if the Eagles get going well early. So that might really neutralize any great coaching advantage or momentum advantage that the Rams have.
Yeah.
I think this is a Howie Roseman special. Again, tipping the cap to the roster work that he has done. And I see the same thing a lot of people see. Jalen Carter is a problem in the middle, a problem. Eagles come out fast. Eagles take care of business. On they go. I've got the Birds in this one. Speaking of Birds, on paper, maybe the best looking game here this week.
No doubt.
Ravens at Bills. Yeah. Of course I'm going to take, who I'm going to take. But Ravens at Bills, I don't know if this can get remarkably into a shootout category, but when you look at it on paper, you think, this one could have some fireworks.
Yep. I'm going with Bills only because it's at home. My 10 criteria, 5-5. There is no real emotional element with this. Playing at Buffalo this time of year, I've been there, now I'm from Michigan. I love it, but it's brutal. It's tough. That home field advantage, the Bills Stadium is just, it's always an advantage, a home field advantage. And when you get to this time of year, it's like a double home field advantage. So I'm going to give it to the Bills. I would not be shocked. I think whoever wins this game is going to the Super Bowl. So I think it's a Super Bowl type game. I think it's by far the best game of the weekend. I'm going with the Bills only because they're at home. Either team winning here, I'm not shocked.
I'm with you there as far as I think the winner here probably wins the Super Bowl. I'm with you in that the home field advantage is strong. I do. The Ravens got to do some redemption. We know how their season ended last year. They kind of came out and fell on their face a bit. Lamar Jackson is playing at an enormously high level. That's not going to be an advantage this week because, of course, he's going up against Josh Allen. They're right there at the top level of the sport. I like the Ravens. They're built to run from ahead. So it is important that they get ahead. If they get ahead, I think they're in really good shape overall. I got to give the edge to the Ravens. I think there's just a little bit more redemption, and they've got a really motivated Derrick Henry who knows this is his last ride and his best look at a Super Bowl. At the same time, the Bills are fantastic. I thought their window closed after too many injuries last year. As we all know, what a ball game this could be. Maybe there'll be some weather involved. I'm right there with you. Can't be surprised either way, but mark me down. Nevermore as a Raven once again. I like the Ravens to steal all the Bills' thunder and get out of town and head off basically one more step, but really position themselves to get to that Super Bowl.
John, we only disagree on one, and you're up one. This is fascinating. We'll find out. Hey, John, tell everybody where to find you on social media.
Still on there on Twitter X at JP Spartan. It's a fun weekend. This is a celebration of the sport. To me, this is the tops. To pull an old phrase out of Old England, this is the tops. This is my favorite weekend. Everybody's going to enjoy it.
I don't know if you can hear Dexter. He's literally yelling, "Bye, John."
I can't.
All right, buddy.
Bye-bye, young man.
We'll see you next time.